Mark, Alan, thank you very much for your comments, your leadership, your role as vice chair of the Brazil-U.S. Business Council, and for Boeing's leadership around the world, the important role that your company plays in the global landscape. It's terrific to be with you this morning. It's a great lineup we have today for the Brazil Council. And I have to say that starting off with the president's remarks, President Bolsonaro really hit the strong theme that we want to cover in our comments with the Secretary of State and the Minister on the importance of this bilateral relationship from a geostrategic standpoint, and obviously the news of the trade negotiations moving forward and the progress that's been made on the bilateral front on commercial issues that are important to members of the Brazil-U.S. Business Council on both sides. I just want to say, Secretary Pompeo, thank you for doing this. I know your schedule is quite busy, but we very much appreciate you being here today. And then also to Minister Ernesto Araujo, I want to just thank you as well. Last time I interviewed you, I think was last year, pre-COVID, when you were here during President Bolsonaro's trip. Let me start with Minister Ernesto. This is a very challenging time, but one of the strengths, I think, of our relationship is that the two countries have been able to think strategically about our partnership on defense issues, on geostrategic issues. Certainly, I want to recognize the trade negotiations and the progress made there and your particular role in promoting that bilateral cooperation. Why is the trade negotiation so important to the foundation of our relationship? And what would you like to highlight from these discussions and more appropriately, the broader framework of our relationship? Minister?
Yeah, so great to see you, Myron, after such a long relationship and so many things we did together in the past with you with the chamber. So thank you very much, and great to see Mike, of course, and everyone here. So yes, I think you said a key word, strategic. Sometimes this word is used where there's no strategy involved, but here we do have a strategy. But it's not a cold strategy. It's a strategy that comes from friendship, from a really shared commitment to freedom and to better lives for our peoples. So this is, I think, what explains the progress we have been making. It's to integrate the different areas of our relationship around some core ideas, around some core commitments. So this is where we can. This is why we can open doors in defense, technology, trade, of course, but also security everywhere. So and those things are interrelated. So and this has to do, of course, with a personal relationship between the two presidents. I would like to say too, I think, all modesty, but I think the friendship that Mike Pompeo and I developed has been important for those new avenues that we're opening. Concretely, what I think we're realizing is that our relationship can make a difference in many levels, on many levels. First of all, of course, between the two countries bilaterally. From the point of view of Brazil, this partnership is absolutely essential for the transformation project that we have in Brazil. We really want to become finally a market economy with a full-fledged democracy. And for that, we need the partnership of a country like the United States, right, which leads the world in those aspects. But also this is a new and strategic relationship also at regional level. We are working very hard, as you know, to promote democracy and to fight organized crime, terrorism, etc. across the hemisphere. This doesn't seem to have directly to do with business, but it does, because and people from South America know that with the instability that can be generated by totalitarian regimes, by the option of those regimes to have ties with organized crime, etc., you cannot have a prosperous region and good business atmosphere. And finally, we can make a difference together in the world. We have been talking a lot about how the post-COVID world, the recovery, must be centered around democracy. We cannot be we can't afford to be indifferent to the democracy and to freedom anymore in the way we shape the world order. So this is, I mean, the very ambitious program that we have. We want to change our country from the point of view of Brazil. We want to change the region, and we want to help changing the world. But that's what we're here for.
Thank you, Minister. Secretary Pompeo, if I can go to you, you heard your friend outline an ambitious regional, bilateral, and I argue a global agenda with the relationship with the United States. Obviously, you've been a terrific advocate on behalf of American business and the U.S. Chamber and our member companies. Thank you for that. I want to just ask you your reflections on the bilateral relationship. Later today, we'll have a trade signing that's important, and we'll talk about that in my follow-up questions. But just your sense of where the relationship is and what progress we've made regionally and bilaterally because of the strong relationship between the two governments, the leaders, and your personal involvement with Minister Ernesto. Secretary?
Well, Myron, thanks. Ernesto, great to see you. We have become good friends. We have a deep shared appreciation for human dignity and freedom, and I think that drives an awful lot. And we have the good news, too. That would be useful but not very productive if we didn't have two leaders, two presidents who shared the same set of understandings and who give us a lot of room to run, a lot of space for the U.S.-Brazil relationship to really deliver. And so we've been given that charter by our two leaders, and Ernesto and I work hard at this. We don't get it right every day, but we are making real progress. You can see it. You see it in the bilateral relationship for sure, and I'm happy to hang on and talk to trade in a little bit. But you see it in the way our security teams are beginning to work. You see it in how we're in a better place with respect to intelligence sharing. We have two nations that produce an awful lot of the world's food, agricultural nations with deep capabilities in ag tech and the capacity to continue to feed the next billion people in the world, and we will continue to work on that together. We were very upfront. We supported Brazil's accession to the OECD. We know something that mattered to Brazil, but it mattered to us as well to make sure that they were part of this important institution. We've watched, too, when it comes to energy issues. There's places we're real competitors. There's places we work closely together. But in the end, I think Ernesto and I both appreciate that together our two countries will find places where we make each other better, where we sharpen each other's capabilities. And I am very confident that the leadership that we have, their ambassador here, our ambassador down there, my big team and Ernesto's big team, all understand the importance to our nations. Just on a bilateral basis, before we get to any of the greater challenges throughout the region, just between our two countries, we are both big economies, big democracies with deep histories. And if we get this right, if we continue to focus on those things that drive freedom throughout the hemisphere, I truly do believe this, that I've invested an awful lot. I was in Boa Vista now, Ernesto, a couple of weeks back, watched the amazing work the Brazilian people are doing and taking care of people fleeing Venezuela. I am convinced that those kinds of things will continue to allow this relationship to flourish, to create opportunities for Brazilian companies to invest in the United States and American companies to invest in Brazil, making each of these two real anchors in this important place that matters so much to the American people.
Secretary of State, can I come back to you? I was going to talk about trade next, but I'm going to talk about Venezuela. You just mentioned the visit that two of you had in Boa Vista on the border of Venezuela. I think obviously it's very important that you continue both countries to work on the democratic values that we think enhances security of the people, brings freedom, brings opportunity, not just for Brazil and the United States, but for the region at large. Can you elaborate on what you think is important for the people of Venezuela to hear in terms of democratic values, in terms of shared purpose? What is it that we can do together with Brazil and friends in the region to make a difference for the people of Venezuela? Some reflections?
Yeah. So look, I think we already have. It was great to be down in Boa Vista with Ernesto. It was hot that day. I saw some pictures. It reminded me. But it was also remarkable to watch. We had a USAID operation there, Brazilian people who were coming around, these desperate souls. We had a chance, Ernesto and I both, he was my translator mostly, had a chance to talk to some of these families who they wanted to go back home. They wanted to be in Venezuela. They didn't want to be in Brazil. They wanted to go back to the place they knew, where their parents were, their families were, where their family histories were. And I watched the Brazilian and Americans together creating a space where that day will come, where that opportunity will truly be there. And so our work together to develop a common set of understandings about how we move together, how we've built out now a coalition of, I think it's 60-some countries that have a shared vision for what a non-socialist, non-Maduro Venezuela might ultimately look like. And then, it's worth mentioning, I had a chance too on that same trip. I went to Colombia and I went to Guyana and I went to Suriname on that same trip, kind of all around Venezuela. And what you could see was there were differences in culture and history in each of those places, but all had a common understanding of the disaster that is Venezuela. And the Venezuelan people should know that I can speak for the United States when saying that we are determined to stay with them. We're determined to support them. We're determined to ensure that Nicolas Maduro, who we've now indicted as a narco trafficker here in the United States, never again leads that country. He may for the moment have the capacity to exert power and influence through the military, but he will not again lead that nation forward. They will find a better place. We, along with our partners in South America, most especially including my good friend Ernesto and President Bolsonaro, we'll get them to a place where they once again have the freedom and opportunity that they so richly deserve.
Minister, let me turn to you on the same question. Besides the fact that it was hot, I'm sure you were a very good host to Secretary Pompeo, and it sounds like it was a very important visit and timely. But what's your reflections on Venezuela and the role of Brazil, the United States, and other countries to try to help enhance the prospects for the people of that country in a very difficult time, but also regionally ensure security and stability? What's your thoughts and reflections?
That's right. Yes, no, it was hot, but it also, I think it was the effect of the warmth that we felt and that we feel between the three peoples, not only between the three countries. And that's very important because sometimes we talk so firmly about the Maduro regime, and people say here in Brazil that we are attacking Venezuela or criticizing Venezuela. It's not that. I mean, Venezuela is a dear nation, a brother or sister nation to us and to the United States and to all other nations in the hemisphere. What you're trying is to help Venezuela to recover their normal life, not only democracy, but respect for human dignity and human rights. So it was very important to be there with Mike Pompeo. We saw firsthand. I had been there before, but this time it was even more, I think, more direct what we felt in terms of the lack of hope from the Venezuelans that are there, but also at the deep of their hearts, yes, the hope of coming back to Venezuela, of having their country back. So we are very proud that Brazil, the United States, we are in the forefront of that sort of international movement, let's say, that is giving back hope to the Venezuelans, that's keeping the light of freedom shining in the back of all the despair that they are living through. So we're working in several fronts. Humanitarian, first of all, the U.S. cooperation to our operations receiving the refugees from Venezuela is absolutely essential, but also political, galvanizing support in the region and elsewhere. But also we have to work in terms of the framing, the real framing of the situation. We have to understand, and Brazil and the United States, I think we need to have this responsibility, together with other countries like Colombia, for example, to show to the world what is really happening in Venezuela and in the region. It's a threat to freedom all across the hemisphere because they're based and they're sustained by a whole network of organized crime and some political currents that live off organized crime in the region. We have to realize that and to fight organized crime in order to have Venezuelans back to a normal democratic life. Those things are not independent, right? So when we talk about cooperation and security and fight against terrorism, etc., in the region, we are talking about democracy at the same time. Those things go absolutely together today in the region. People have to realize that, and countries from other regions that, for some reasons, still support Maduro and his tyranny. They need to realize that, because if they say they are against terrorism, how can they support a regime that harbors terrorism? If they say they are for human rights, how can they support a regime that is considered a regime that has committed crimes against humanity, right? It's also a question of communication. We have to tell the real story to the world and to show that this kind of regime cannot be legitimate, cannot lead legitimate elections, for example, that they have no place in our region, right? Through peaceful means, through political means, but not refraining from saying harsh things like in the past. And Brazil has we feel we have a responsibility, a special responsibility for that, because unfortunately, during previous governments, previous administrations in Brazil either supported the creation of this nightmare in Venezuela or was indifferent to it at best. Now we really want to be a part of the solution. We have to admit that Brazil helped create the problem. Now we have to for the whole region, right? Well, now we have to be a part of the solution, and with the partnership with the United States is absolutely essential for that.
Well, let me turn to you first, and then to the Secretary on the final two questions. First, look, the role of the private sector. This is a conference that is being attended by business leaders from both the United States and from Brazil. And we're here to support the two governments' efforts to enhance cooperation. Obviously, economic recovery from the pandemic is critical for both the United States, Brazil, and the global community. Thinking about regional economic integration, and both of you have talked about strengthening democratic values and institutions. The president talked about the economic partnership and talked about trade just now. I want Minister Ernesto, I know you've rolled up your sleeves in these trade negotiations. I want to say that we're looking forward to the signing later today. The U.S. Chamber, through the Brazil-U.S. Business Council, will applaud the progress today. I want your reflections on what this means, but I also want to just say that, there are areas that we still hope you pursue further with the United States, like in the digital area, on de minimis and trade facilitation. There are areas that we want to continue to see more progress. But we are happy that some progress has been made on the trade front. It's important. Tell us what you think it means in terms of the broader relationship and what it means for commercial dealings between the two countries.
Yes. I think we are building a very strong partnership on top of what we have been calling the spirit of Mar-a-Lago, the spirit of the last meeting of the two presidents in Florida, which talks about an economic partnership and a trade package in the short term. So we're working short term, mid-term, and long term. In the short term, we're already achieving, I think, more than we have in a very long time with the new regulatory agreements, and also with some specific solutions that we're working on for sectors like steel and ethanol, sugar. This is part of something. I think that's what we need to understand. As long as we try to go forward only dealing with specific issues and specific areas, it was very difficult for a long time. So now with the drive towards a very deep economic partnership and commitment, this is why we can have a totally different speed in the way and how to approach the solutions in a totally different way. And this is why I think we are delivering much more than we have in many years. From the point of view of Brazil, because we overcame the sort of feeling that we have to have a good relationship with the United States, but we don't have to like them. I mean, we have to just to trade and not to build upon all the values that we share with the United States. So this was the prospect for a long time, and this didn't work, of course, because relationships are much deeper than just the specific give and take. So now, because we have this common vision, this common commitment, this is why we're delivering on so many areas. But we're very enthusiastic about the future. We really see the two economies very integrated. This is very important for the Brazilian economy. Why? Because we're trying, as I said, to build a market economy, not the sort of hybrid economy that we always had. And for that, we need private investment. We need the partnerships. We need innovation. We need the innovation culture that exists in the United States. We need all the dynamism that I think only the United States can provide as a key partner for Brazil. So and we need the instruments to deliver that. You talked about electronic commerce and the digital economy. This is absolutely essential. The pandemic has accelerated the transition of the world towards digital economy. We have to be ahead of those changes, but also, I mean, everything that's regulatory, but market access as well. We have to talk more in depth about that, and build this economic partnership that can include free trade agreement, that can include an investment agreement, a double taxation agreement, something that with the friends from the chamber have been talking about for a long time, right? All that is possible. All that is not only possible. All that is in the horizon if we keep this spirit that comes from the leaders, and that has to do from the point of view of Brazil, to repeat that, with the recognition that we really are historically a key partner with the United States, and not just any other country. Okay.
Well, Minister Ernesto, I appreciated you acknowledged, one, that this is an important stepping stone, but there's more work to be done in areas like regulatory practices, in digital and other space. Secretary Pompeo, tomorrow I'll be interviewing Larry Kudlow and Bob Lighthizer, two colleagues of yours you know quite well. So my question is, one, how do you see this trade negotiation that was reached as a stepping stone to the important commercial and strategic relationship? How does it fit into your narrative? And two, I wanted to ask you about the OECD campaign. We have supported Brazil's accession to the OECD. I know the Trump administration has also. Is this something that you would consider tabling soon in terms of getting that moving forward? I just wanted to ask you because obviously the Trump administration has been very supportive of Brazil's accession process. The U.S. Chamber through our Brazil-U.S. Business Council has been out there as well. So two questions to you to help wrap up.
Let me take the second one first. Look, we're getting closer to that place with respect to the OECD. We want this to happen as quickly as we can. I'll actually leave to Ambassador Lighthizer the details on that. But he and I have been working closely on this for, goodness gracious, a year and change, maybe a year and a half now. I want to just piggyback for your first question on what Ernesto said. Look, we got a first step done. That's great. I remember when I was down in Brazil for President Bolsonaro's inauguration at the very beginning of 2019. We had a short time to meet, and he basically said, economy, drive, open markets. And we had a frank conversation about the work that he had to do the internal work inside of Brazil to reform some of the barriers to entry inside of Brazil, to get the markets functional in a way that Ernesto knows in his heart matter most. And we have been driving at that ever since. I give President Bolsonaro and Foreign Minister Araujo enormous credit for the work that they have done. It takes a long time to take these deep traditions that wrap culture around them and to get them to move forward in a way that will ultimately accrue to enormous benefit of the Brazilian people, as well as to the benefit of Americans who want to go down there and invest. I remember too, we were talking, I think the number is, I think we did $450 million, or we're participating in $450 million of transactions with Export-Import Bank this year. There's several $100 million more in the pipeline. That's great. The DFC now is soft circled about $1 billion worth of projects. That's good. That's important. I think it'll be catalyst for some other good things. But in the end, we've got to get the people who are on this call, on this virtual meeting, to have the space to move, to have confidence in the rule of law, to have the confidence if there's a conflict, that there's an adjudication process that works, that there's a court system that is functional, that there's a government that will stand behind the rule of law. Those are the things that I think President Bolsonaro has done such remarkable work on. And I know they are intent on driving to the conclusion. When that happens, I am very confident that you will have these two very powerful anchors on the from the United States and Brazil that will wrap around inside of a regional opportunity for a huge expansion in trade amongst the region. And then I'll add one last thing. Ernesto and I have talked about this a lot. This is where trade and security connect, and that has to do with the Chinese Communist Party. They are big participants in each of our nation's two economies. Each of our two economies benefits from much of that trade, but there's enormous risk attached to it as well. And to the extent we can find ways that we can increase the trade between our two countries, we can, by that, decrease each of our two nations' dependence for critical items coming from China. Each of our two peoples will be more secure, and each of our two nations will be far more prosperous, whether that's 2 or 5 or 10 years from now. This connection that you all are working on as part of this gathering is central to not only increased prosperity, but the security that comes with having this north-south axis of trade, which is incredibly and has powerful today. It has the capacity to be even more powerful and important tomorrow.
I'm really glad that, one, you talked about the trade agreement being a catalyst for investment. You referenced the DFC. I think Adam Buller and the DFC has done a great job, and Exim Bank as well, and they're part of the tools in your arsenal to encourage more investment and to spur U.S. companies to look at Brazil. And I also think, Minister Ernesto, you deserve a lot of credit for encouraging the government as well. Can I ask you for your each final thought that you want to leave with the business communities of both countries today? First, Minister Ernesto, your final thought.
Sure. I think one way to sum up what we're talking here and what Mike and I have been discussing for a long time, and everything that's happening between Brazil and the United States, I think points in that direction. That we cannot have market economies working separately from democracies. So a real market economy can only work on top of a democratic structure. And also democracies can only work if they're based on sound market economy. So political freedom and economic freedom go together. I think that's the vision we have for our societies, for our relationship between the two countries, for the hemisphere, and also for the world. We can, to repeat what I said, but I think this is very important. We can make a difference. Together, we can make a difference in the world, together with other democracies, in order that the economic structure of the world can come back to being centered around the values of freedom. If you look at the WTO, at its founding, it is supposed to be based on market values. If you look at the Declaration of Human Rights back in 1948, it's centered around civil freedoms, civil liberties, right? And somehow this has been lost along the road during the globalization process. We have to go back to those fundamentals. Free societies can only work on top of free economies, and free economies need the freedom of the democratic system. This is, I think, the central message.
Thank you for that. If I could turn now to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, your final thoughts?
I have enormous confidence that this relationship will continue to grow between our two countries. These economic ties that we have begun to develop will be lasting. We have a big election coming up here in a couple, 3 weeks here in the United States. But I've been working on this for now 4 years in the executive branch, first as the director of the CIA, now as Secretary of State. This is a completely bipartisan operation in the sense of, I think there is a deep understanding all across America that the American people benefit from a set of deeper, closer ties with all of our friends in the Western Hemisphere and in South America, and that it is not possible to have a solid, capable, deep set of relationships there without an anchor like Brazil has proven to be. And so I'm proud of what we've accomplished. I know there's an awful lot that remains to do, and I look forward to continuing to build that out and watching this relationship continue to flourish and watch American investment and Brazilian investment here both continue to grow and grow and grow and tie our two countries ever closer together. It'll be a good thing. Myron, thanks for having me with you today.
Okay, well, Minister Araujo and, of course, Secretary Pompeo, the two of you are terrific partners, clearly working together, aligned on many issues. We want to support your endeavors, support the strengthening of the U.S.-Brazil relationship. We really thank you for taking the time today to be with us, and we look forward to your continued partnership and work in the weeks and months ahead, and maybe years as well. So good luck, to both of you, and thank you for taking some time with us.
Great. Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you, Myron.
Thanks. See you.
Bye-bye.
So long.